A few days ago it was revealed that the ETU is giving $20,000 to the Greens campaign in the seat of Melbourne against me. Now the great tragedy of this is that that's $20,000 that's not being dedicated to defeating the Howard government, and of course it further ups the ante in the contest for the seat of Melbourne. What it really demonstrates though is that the Greens actually aren't on about defeating the Howard government. The Greens are on about knocking over Labor. We're the real enemy of the Greens. They put their effort, their energies, their resources into defeating members like me, like Anthony Albanese, like Tanya Plibersek in Sydney, in electorates where there is a significant progressive left-wing pro-Green vote. Now that's fine, anybody's entitled to have a go at us, but more than anything else what matters in this election is getting rid of the Howard government. And all of the effort, all of the resources, all the money that goes into the battle in those seats is effort, resources and money that's not being dedicated to the battle against the Howard government. It's pretty clear that the Greens basically don't care who the government is. For all of their posturing, they're not really dedicated to getting rid of the Howard government, they're dedicated to knocking over Labor members. And what really blows the whistle on the Greens is their preferencing behaviour. Now in the state election they deliberately didn't preference in a range of seats in Victoria, which means in effect that they're saying to people it doesn't matter whether you pass your preferences to Liberal or Labor, so we don't care if a Liberal government is elected to replace the Victorian Labor government. And federally, they consistently preference to the Liberals ahead of Family First. Now lots of Labor voters, for understandable reasons, don't like Family First, but they should understand one thing. Family First voted against work choices in the Senate. The Liberals are the architects of work choices. So what that means is that Green preferences around Australia will be directed to the Liberals, the architects of work choices, ahead of a party that has a significant chance of getting further positions in the Senate, Family First, who voted against work choices. And it is quite possible that somewhere in Australia Green preferences will elect a Liberal senator ahead of a Family First senator because of the vagaries of the Senate voting system. If there are three parties left in the contest for the last seat, the Liberals, Family First and the Greens are running third, they'll get eliminated and their preferences will elect a Liberal ahead of a Family First senator. And it's even theoretically possible that Green preferences could decide the overall outcome of the Senate and ensure that there is a pro-work choices majority still there, even if a Labor government's been elected. So much for the party that claims to be strongly anti-work choices and pro-union. It's nothing new. The first Green councillor elected in Victoria was elected on the Yarra Council in my electorate about 5 or 6 years ago, off the back of a campaign against the installation of parking meters in a local shopping area. In other words, in effect, on a pro-car position. And more recently, the Greens, along with the Liberals and one or two others, have voted down legislation in the Victorian Parliament that would have required a referendum on the question of whether nuclear power is to be introduced by a federal Liberal government into Victoria, for reasons that nobody really can explain or understand. The Greens narrowcast a message to a section of the Labor supporting electorate that's all about demonstrating that they're more pure, they're more hardline, they're stronger. And of course, that's easy to do when they are not the ones who've got to defeat the Conservatives. They're not the ones who've got to persuade disinterested, middle-of-the-road voters or often quite conservative voters to switch their votes from Liberal to the progressive side. All they do is attack Labor, all they do is criticise Labor. They don't do the hard yards that are necessary to defeat the worst government Australia's ever had, the most nasty Conservative government Australia's ever had. They are there just simply trying to take the pickings off Labor, and in effect they make it harder for Labor to defeat John Howard and the Conservatives because they draw away significant energy, significant resources that otherwise would be out in the battleground in marginal seats against the Liberals into battles in areas like my seat. Now, as I've said, they're entitled to do that. And I make no claims to special protection against competition. I can look after myself. But I find it distressing that the substantial amounts of money and people resources that historically have been generated by Labor in my electorate, instead of being out in the eastern suburbs or in a regional seat fighting to take a seat from the Liberals, as it historically has been, is actually going to be largely dedicated to protecting Labor in my seat. The Greens should be held to account for this. If they're fair dinkum about getting rid of the Howard government, it's about time they started acting like it.